Hey, this is Adrian from Champaign Hope for Good, and I'm just out here enjoying a beautiful day with this wonderful taco. And each Tuesday, we're going to be gathering with a leader from our community, one of our collaborating partners, tacoing about Champaign Hope for Good over tacos. What can be better than that? We'll see you next week. Hey everybody, this is Adrian Calhoun with Champaign Hope for Good. I'm here with my friend Bob Custer today, and we're here for another Taco About It Tuesday segment. So, we're excited to talk today, but first of all, let's dink it and sink it.
Whoa!
So, as we talked about in our last time, we had our Taco About It Tuesday segment. We talked about how Champaign Hope for Good is a collaboration of individuals and organizations in our community united behind a cause of hope for good. And so Bob has been, was the CEO of Downsize Farm and has been involved in ministry as well as in a lot of community organizations here. And so we're excited to have you be part of the partnership in Hope for Good, Bob. And so today we're going to talk about it.
Talk about it.
Yes. So I want you to first off talk about who you are, and both kind of personally and organizationally, and kind of what you're into.
All right. Well, I'm the Badger in Buckeye Land. You know, the resident. We've lived here for about 30 years now, having moved down in 1989 from Wisconsin. Pastored a church for a while, and then got involved with foster care and caring for people with disabilities, and then started the agency in 2006. So I'll usually call it The Adventure Continues. And so we moved down here in 88, bought the little place on Parkview Road that we've got 2.5 acres that has become known as Downsize Farm in 06 or 01, started the agency in 06. To 2010, things began to grow, and so added on to our barn there and made it an activity center for working with adults with disabilities. We got certified to be a Medicaid certified provider with the State Department of Developmental Disabilities. And then 2015, things were continued to grow, and we wanted to add an employment division to it, as well as have an outlet for some of the crafts and other things we were doing. So ended up having the building here at 927 North Main was available to rent and then later purchase. My daughter Bobby was just finishing her work at Heidelberg and wanted to start a coffee shop. So Spotted Cow came into existence about then, and then in last COVID hit and everything got in a transition. In 2021, a bit of a transition for me. I retired as CEO. Bobby's taking over for that, and I'm refired for some other adventure.
Awesome.
So that's where I'm at.
That's fantastic. We'll talk about a little bit of what you do, focusing on what Downsize Farm does, maybe a little more in depth, or just what you're passionate about in this season of life.
Well, one of the things that for the transition or into just working for Downsize Farm is my son Levi was born in 1994 while I'm still pastoring the church. It entered me into the world of developmental disabilities. Levi had Down syndrome, and it was a kind of a crisis point in my life. What do we do with this? At that time I found out a little bit about resources available here in Champaign County. Got involved with the Champaign County Board of DD with services. I actually even served as president of the board for a while. But so I found that God was just giving me a heart to do things and saw the needs of families who supported their children or were caregivers of people with disabilities. And so in 06, the department recognized the need for every individual to do things that were a little bit more consistent with what life was like in Ohio in their county, rather than everybody going to a workshop or whatever. There weren't many options. So Downsize Farm was a little bit of a response to that, of doing DD services, kind of using actually a 4-H model, which was born here in Champaign County, and learning by doing. And so what was unique about we set up things like my background. I was a dairy farmer in Wisconsin. We've got animals and grow things. I moved here to grow things, and So that's kind of what we do, and allowed people that we serve. Our first of all, my son Levi, and then we ended up adopting another son, Eric, who had Down syndrome as well. They're only 3 months apart, so they're both 27 now. Fostered another gal with Randy who has Crete-Shaw syndrome for 20 years. She recently moved to another, what's called Ohio Shared Living Home. So it just gave us an idea of what the needs are for people with disabilities, for their caregivers, as well as how can we bridge that into services that are provided by the state or government agencies or things like that. So that just gave me a comfortableness with that process, saw some of the problems, and yet was able to take resources that were out there, somehow tap into them and help provide and connect people with those services.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And a very, very needed service in the community, a very huge part, and we thank you for playing your role in that. So as you've been in Hope for Good, been a partner with us for several months now. Talk about just a little bit what you're most excited about being part of Hope for Good and being engaged in the community moving forward.
Well, I think one of the concept here of what can be done, I got with that background with Downsize Farm, it helps me realize that hope is such a critical piece of what can we do in the future. When Levi was first born, I was clueless about what is life going to be like with a child with disabilities for our family, and began to see there's resources out there. Some are more accessible than others. Found out how I had to access things. Some of those processes weren't all that thrilling, and came to the conclusion that what are these guys going to do when they're 20, and realized maybe there are some things we can do ourselves that help access that, give at least another option of hope for good for their life, their quality of their life. And so when I am a little bit of a transition myself right now, and became familiar with you and what you were doing and some of the ideas of that, realized that there are probably other needs that are out there that can be met. And part of because Downsize Farm has a faith-based background, motivated by for God so loved the world that He gave, and love makes things matter. Yeah. And so the significance of caring for a person with disability is more than just a good thing. It's a right thing. It's a powerful thing. It's not a waste of life or time. When we understand that this concept that life has value, and it's made in the image of God, Downsize Farm is a tangible way of affirming the value of every life. That is something that I think the Faith Coalition is all about. Many other service organizations want to do it. Our experience with some of the service organizations here, especially with DD Services, initially was wonderful to be able to have access, even though they were limited in their budgets and all those kinds of things. So what I see with the Hope for Good and this Faith Coalition is that we are actively looking for needs that might be bridging resources both in the community as well in the faith base of this. The motivation is there. Sometimes just getting the organizational structure to make things happen, to get this resource at that place. And there's a momentum to it. And I realize that we're just kind of getting started with this, but that something can be done. And I believe that there's a lot of people, many people who are of faith and love this community, love living where we live, that yet are very aware of needs, yet what can I do? This Hope for Good is another way to go about that I believe can be blessed by God and as well as bring a blessing to everybody involved with that.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Well, and I'm inspired too. I'm inspired at what change we're going to see and just the way that we can help people. Ultimately, God gave us hope. Yes. And so by helping others, we share that hope. So how could people who are looking to get involved with Downsize Farm or some of the work that that you're involved with, how could they get involved?
Well, Downsize Farm specifically, we have a website, downsizefarm.com, and you can take a look at what we do and all of that. And there's obviously a lot of need there. I think one of the messages that we want to, that I'd like to convey, and I see it with Hope for Good, that well, what difference does building a ramp make? When you identify with a family, that the difference between just going someplace and not going someplace is how am I going to get them into the car, or those kinds of things. It makes more than a tangible difference, a world of difference. And sometimes we can do things like that. With Downsize Farm, just having a caregiver for a family that they know that's reliable, that can help provide services, whether it's in their home or it gives some hope that and many times we might have a knowledge of resources for a family that's not directly involved with our agency, but we can connect you with someone. And that's the great thing about Hope for Good, is that we've got lots of different connections, and so plus, as far as being provided directly or involved with Downsize Farm, I think part of our message is this: being involved in this field is worth your time. Love makes things matter. And when you care for a person with a disability and take of your time and your energy and you love them, not just provide a service, but and time and time again, people who work in this field will tell you they are blessed to do what they do. That being said, resources are limited, financial resources are limited, what all we can do, but and access to those things, we can, if it's there, if we can support you, we want to help you find a way to do that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you, Bob, for joining us today. And we want to encourage everybody who's watching our video, thank you for taking your time out. And we encourage you to like, comment, and share below. And check out Downsize Farm. Thanks, everybody. See you next Taco Tuesday.